Hello, my name is Paige Wright, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on Junot Diaz. So, Junot Diaz was born in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic on December 31st, 1968. Here's just a quick picture of him. And he developed a strong love for literature as a young child. He often spent time in libraries and reading and doing all that stuff. And despite that, Diaz was still a very social kid, and he got into a lot of fights, so he was a little rowdy and everything growing up. So he moved from the Dominican Republic at the age of 6 to Harlan, New Jersey. He recalls not knowing English on his first day of school in the States and referred to himself as being dressed like something out of a wetback comedy. And I just say that to kind of display how his provocative approach to writing. So Diaz was born into a very hardworking family. His mother worked on an assembly line and cleaned homes for a living. And his father, who was a military policeman in the Dominican Republic, he drove a forklift for a living. So Diaz often says that his father's hyper masculinity and his toughness was a huge influence on his writing and his life. Junot was the third of 5 children growing up. He later worked his way through college, working various jobs, including delivering pool tables and working at a steel mill. So he's not afraid to get his hands dirty and do what he has to do. He started his college career at King College, which is now King University, and went on to earn a bachelor's degree in English from Rutgers University in 1992. He also earned a Master of Fine Arts from Cornell University in 1995. And so he also worked for the Rutgers Press before he went to grad school. So in between that period, he was still working for the Rutgers Press. All during this time, he was working on the short stories that later turned into his first book, Drown, which we just read as a class. It was really good. And he spoke about wanting to be a teacher early on, but described writing as a secret passion that he had. But as we all know, he chose writing as a career. However, he now teaches at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and previously taught at Syracuse University in the late 90s. So he kind of, ended up picking both, which I think is really cool. So we're going to move on to Mr. Diaz's body of work. Junot Diaz, he published various short stories in magazines, primarily The New Yorker. His first work was Drown, which was published in 1996, like I said before, we're reading as a class. And Drown is a collection of short stories narrated by a 9-year-old boy named Junior, who is a Dominican immigrant that is living in the United States. So he's often referred to as Junot's alter ego throughout. And the stories are set in New Jersey and the Dominican Republic, and focus on immigration, family, which is a huge theme in Diaz's writing, sexuality, also a huge theme, poverty, and belonging. So his first novel, which is The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, was published 10 years after Drown. So Diaz is kind of acclaims himself to be this writer who doesn't publish like every year or every 2 years constantly. He likes to let it marinate, and when he feels compelled to put something out, he will. So it was published 10 years after Drown, which was in 2007. It was published, and it began as a short story in the New Yorker in 2002. And the novel focuses on Oscar, who is described as an obese ghetto nerd, and he's of Dominican descent. Oscar is considered to be awkward, but is also a tragic hero. He and his family explore their connection to the history of the Dominican Republic and their own lives. So his last, not his last, but the last novel that I have listed actually it's not a novel, it's a collection of short stories as well, is This Is How You Lose Her. It was published in 2012. And like I said, it was Junot's collection of short stories that focus on infidelity, Dominican machoism, cultural identity, and love. This book became a bestseller and was a finalist for the National Book Award. It focuses on Junior, who is now all grown up, and it deals with love and the consequences of his serial infidelity. So it's kind of finding himself through that within that work of short stories. And so we're going to move on to some of the awards that Diaz has won. So the first, he's won a lot of awards, and so I just have about 5 listed here. So the first one is the U.S. Japan Creative Artists Fellowship and Awards and Fellowships. National Endowment for the Arts in 2002. The second one is John Sargent Sr.'s first novel prize in 2007. The next one is Dayton Literary Peace Prize of Fiction in 2008. The next is the Puzzler Prize in Fiction in 2008. And he was the second Latino writer to win this in history, so that's great. And in 2012, he won a MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. So he's a very accomplished writer. Very accomplished, very sought after, very good at his craft. So we're going to move on to his artistic interests. And he has a lot of themes that he kind of sticks to that are woven into his stories. And you can almost always find these themes. And so I'm going to go over a few of them. The first one is cultural identity. So Diaz presents the theme of cultural identity throughout his works. Being a proud Dominican himself, it is very apparent that he feels that being in tune with your roots and knowing where you came from is extremely important. And this is presented throughout his stories. So the second is sexuality. Sexuality is also a big theme, huge theme with Diaz's writing, particularly in reference to Latino masculinity. He kind of challenges masculinity, that form of masculinity in all forms, and causes the reader to question what masculinity really is. Next one is family. Family is huge for Diaz. Family is extremely important to him, and it's conveyed through his work, hugely through his work. He believes that worth and identity comes from knowing your family and your roots. I'll have to say I agree with him with that. The next is political issues of immigrants. He kind of indirectly talks about this, some of the struggles and political issues that persons of Latino descent can and will face when moving to this country, the United States, or even staying in their own home country. He tackles this more head-on in The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, but it's kind of an undertone in a lot of his stories. And so the last that I found really interesting was language. Diaz uses Spanglish in his writing, which is a mixture of English and Spanish. If you didn't know, now you know. And even though this can be viewed as less than desirable by many when reading it, because it's kind of hard to switch back and forth, he still chooses to include it, saying that, this is a quote from him, saying, I've almost never read an adult book where I didn't have to pick up a dictionary. I want there to be an element of incomprehension. What is language without incomprehension, and what is art without incomprehension? And that's a quote from him. And that is the life of Diaz. He's very interesting. Love his work, love Drown, and we'll be exploring him further. Thank you guys for listening, and you guys have a great day.